The stagecoach rattled like bones in a coffin, wheels screaming as it lurched into Dry Creek's main street. Dust lifted in choking waves, rolling over the planked sidewalks and sticking to the sweat of men leaning outside the saloon. Doors swung, spitting out the sour notes of a piano, then slammed back to silence. Every head turned. The coach groaned to a halt. Horses stamped and snorted, foam trailing their bits. The driver spat, climbed down, and without ceremony flung open the door. A woman stepped out. Her boots hit the dirt hard, sinking half an inch in the dust. A plain bonnet shadowed her face, her dress worn from miles of travel, hemmed dark with grit. She clutched a weather-beaten trunk close, as though every piece of her life had been packed inside. The town looked at her the way a circle of coyotes sizes up an unexpected stray. "Mail-order bride," someone muttered, not bothering to keep it low. A ripple of chuckles followed. She straightened, though the weight of eyes pressed heavy. Her breath came shallow, chest rising against a bodice stitched and restitched too many times. Across the street, a blacksmith's hammer paused mid-swing. Two card players at a barrel exchanged knowing grins. The wind dragged a tumbleweed down the street like a bad omen. She waited, looked. No one came. The driver cleared his throat, lifted his hat, and climbed back up. "Lady, this as far as I take you." With a crack of the reins, the stagecoach lurched away, leaving her swallowed in its dust. The silence after the wheels faded was worse than the noise. She stood, trunk at her feet, face turned toward the sun, as if daring it not to burn her. Minutes bled out. The man who had written her letters, who had promised her a place, a name, a future, did not come. A whistle cut through the tension. Guess he changed his mind. One of the card players drawled, "Or maybe he ain't here no more." Laughter rippled, low and cruel. Her fingers tightened around the trunk handle. She willed herself not to flinch, not to let the sting reach her eyes. She had crossed miles of desert and fear, all for this, only to be left standing like an abandoned horse at auction. Then a tug, small, barely felt through her skirt. She glanced down. A girl stood there, barefoot. Dust clung to her toes, to her tangled hair. Her eyes were wide, too big for her thin face, but steady, eyes that had seen more than child's share of grief. She whispered, so faint it might have been mistaken for the wind, "Can you be my mommy?" The word struck like a shot. The street went still. Men who had been smirking lost their voices. Even the saloon doors froze mid-creak. The woman stared, mouth half open, unable to draw a breath. The child's hand was small, dirty, insistent. A cough broke the silence. From the sheriff's office, a tall figure stepped out, badge glinting, hat low. Sheriff Callahan. He watched the scene, jaw set like stone. "Emma," he said sharply, "get on home." But the child didn't move. She clung tighter. The murmurs began again, but softer, uncertain. Someone whispered a name, Jonas Hale. The woman's eyes flicked from the child to the faces around her. All of them carried the same look: pity, fear, contempt. Sheriff Callahan crossed the street slow, boots crunching. He stopped just short of her, his shadow stretching over trunk and child. His voice was low, meant for her ears alone. "You don't want to be caught up in that one's mess," he said. His gaze slid to Emma. Her daddy's trouble. Nothing but trouble. The child finally looked up, and in her face the woman saw a pleas so raw it cut deeper than the sheriff's warning. The woman bent, just slightly, enough to meet the girl's eyes. Dust swirled between them. "Who is your daddy?" she asked. Her voice steady though her chest trembled. The girl pointed east, toward the empty horizon, where the canyons carved the sky like scars. Murmurs swelled. Jonas Hale. The name moved like a shadow through the crowd. Ex-gunfighter. Killer. Recluse. The sheriff shifted. "You do best to forget that name, miss. Folks that don't end up buried." But Clara Boone, though no one knew her name yet, did not turn away. She straightened, hand still resting on the child's shoulder. Her trunk sat abandoned in the dust, but she held fast to the only thing in this town that had reached for her. The whispers rose, circling like vultures. "She's going with him. Crazy woman. Doesn't know who she's tangling with. The child tugged again, stronger now. "Please," she said. And Clara Boone, alone, unwanted, with nothing but the strength that had carried her across deserts, lifted her trunk and followed the child into the sun-scorched horizon. Behind her, the sheriff watched with a frown carved deep as canyon stone. He spat into the dirt, muttered low, "God help her." The street exhaled. The saloon piano started up again, discordant. Men shook their heads and turned back to their games. But the dust hung longer than it should have, as if the town itself knew something had shifted. A woman left unwanted, a child desperate for a mother, and a name whispered like thunder before the storm, Jonas Hale. The gate screeched like a wounded animal when the girl pushed it open. Hinges gave way to silence, the kind that settles heavy over a place long left to ghosts. Clara Boone stepped through, trunk dragging behind her, boots crunching gravel. The Hale ranch spread wide in ruin and resilience. Fences leaning, fields more dust than grass, a barn with half its roof sagged in. Beyond, the canyon rim split the horizon like a scar. The child ran ahead, skirts flaring, bare feet slapping hard-packed earth. "Daddy!" she called, voice sharp against the emptiness. From the porch, a figure moved, tall, broad-shouldered. The sun caught the scar across his jaw, pale against tan skin. His eyes narrowed as he took in the stranger trailing his daughter. He did not smile. The woman stopped short of the steps. The air between them thickened with something unspoken, heavy as storm clouds. The girl flung her arms around his waist, looking up, pleading. She came, Emma said breathless. "She's here." Jonas Hale's hand rested on the child's head, but his eyes stayed locked on the newcomer. Hard eyes, honed by years of looking down gun barrels and seeing men fall. "Who are you?" His voice was gravel, low and worn. Clara shifted, fingers whitening on her trunk's handle. "My name's Clara Boone. Why are you here?" She opened her mouth, then stopped. The truth felt too fragile in his gaze. Before she could answer, Emma's small voice cut in. "She's my mommy." The words cracked something in the silence. Jonas stiffened. For a moment, it seemed he might laugh bitterly or curse, or send them both away. Instead, he stepped down, boots thudding on the dirt, and stood eye to eye with the woman. "My daughter's got no say in who stays," he said flat. "And I didn't send for you." Clara swallowed, throat dry. "I didn't say you did." The tension stretched. Dust swirled at their feet. Wind tugged at her bonnet. Emma tugged his hand. "Please, Daddy, don't send her away." Jonas looked at the girl, then at Clara, then past him to the horizon, where the land rolled endless and empty. Finally, with a grunt, he turned back up the steps. "You want a roof tonight, you'll find it here. But don't mistake it for welcome." He vanished inside. The ranch breathed in slow rhythms, wind through broken boards, cattle lowing far off, the groan of an old windmill. Clara worked in silence, hanging her dress by the fire, scrubbing dishes left black with grease. Her hands moved steady, practiced, as though she had always belonged in someone's forgotten kitchen. Jonas entered only to set down his gun belt, each motion deliberate, his eyes brushing over her like she was another piece of furniture he hadn't asked for. He lit a lamp, the flame's glow catching the lines etched deep in his face. Emma curled in Clara's lap, as if she had been waiting her whole life for it. "You ain't afraid," Jonas said finally, voice sharp with suspicion. "Should I be?" His gaze lingered. "Most are." Silence swallowed them again. Days bled into one another. Clara mended torn shirts with thread barely holding together, pulled weeds from soil that gave nothing, and steadied a fence-post in wind that seemed bent on tearing the land apart. Jonas watched from the porch, arms folded, eyes unreadable. She worked until her palms split, until sweat stung her eyes, until Emma's laughter followed her across the fields like music. One evening, Jonas stepped into the yard with a rifle. He fired once, the echo rolling across the canyon, and a rabbit fell in the brush. His movements were smooth, unthinking, too skilled to belong to a man who claimed to have left violence behind. Clara's hands froze on the washboard. The truth whispered through the town's warnings and Emma's hopeful eyes. This man had been forged in blood. That night, As firelight danced, Clara touched the rifle propped in the corner. Her fingers brushed the worn stock. Jonas's eyes flicked to her. "You know how to use that?" Her gaze held his. "I do." He searched her face as if weighing the truth. The corner of his scarred mouth twitched. Not quite approval, not quite disbelief. Trouble came in whispers first. At the general store, Clara heard men talking low about Silas McGraw, the land baron who wanted every acre within 20 miles. They spoke of burned barns, cattle rustled in the night, families driven out. She carried the words back with her, each step heavy, the canyon wind pressing hard against her chest. Jonas was repairing a corral when she arrived. She hesitated, then spoke. "They're saying McGraw's men are coming for you." Jonas didn't pause. Hammer struck nail, which shuddered. "Let them talk." "You'll do nothing?" He straightened, sweat streaking the dust on his face. "Done enough in my life. Ain't looking for more. But they'll take this place. Take Emma." His jaw tightened. For the first time, his hand trembled on the hammer. Clara saw it then. Not just a recluse, not just a scarred man, but someone running from himself, from ghosts that hunted him through every waking hour. The wind howled over the canyon rim, carrying with it a promise of fire and blood. Clara tightened her shawl around her shoulders, her eyes never leaving him. "If you won't fight for it," she said quietly, "I will." The words hung sharp between them. Jonas turned, the scar on his jaw white in the dying light. For a long moment, the air was still. Then, from the shadows of the canyon, a coyote howled, long and mournful, and the Hale Ranch seemed to shiver, as if the land itself knew the storm was already on its way. Flames roared against the night like hungry beasts. The barn was burning. Sparks leapt into the canyon wind, embers streaking across the sky, smoke curling black and furious. Horses screamed inside the stalls, the timbers cracking under heat. Emma clung to Clara's skirts, eyes wide with terror. Clara didn't hesitate. She shoved the child toward the porch. "Stay!" she barked, voice sharp as iron, then sprinted into the blaze. The heat blistered her face. Smoke seared her throat. She grabbed a half-broken plank, wedging against the stall door. A mare burst free, nearly trampling her in its panic. She coughed hard, eyes watering, arms straining against the stubborn wood. Gunfire split the night. Jonas Hale was in the yard, revolvers drawn, sparks from the muzzle flashing bright against the inferno. His shots rang out clean, deliberate. A shadow dropped in the brush. Another cursed and fled into the dark. Clara pulled the last stall open, shoving the calf out with raw force, then stumbled into the yard, coughing, hair singed. Behind her, the barn's roof sagged, then collapsed in a shower of sparks. Jonas caught her arm. "You're out of your damn mind," he growled, but there was no mistaking the flicker of awe in his eyes. "They'd have burned alive," Clara rasped. Another shot rang out from the canyon ridge. The dirt spat at Jonas's boots. He whirled, returning fire, movements too fluid, too deadly to belong to a man who had claimed peace. Clara staggered to the porch, snatching the rifle propped there. She dropped to one knee, sighting down the barrel through the haze. A figure rose against the ridgeline, silhouetted by fire. She squeezed. The shot cracked sharp and final. The man pitched forward into the dust. The yard went still except for the roar of fire. Jonas turned slowly, eyes on her, face hard as stone. She met his gaze steady, rifle still in her hands. "You said you could shoot," he muttered. "Didn't reckon you meant like that." She chambered another round. "Then you don't know me at all." When dawn bled over the canyon, the barn was nothing but blackened ribs against the sky. The air stank of ash and death. Cattle pressed nervously against fences, eyes rolling white. Jonas sat on the porch, arms braced on his knees, smoke streaking his shirt, revolver still within reach. Clara stood beside him, hands raw and blistered, but her chin lifted. Emma dozed against her lap, curls tangled with soot. Jonas spoke low, almost to himself. "McGraw's men don't quit. He'll keep coming. Until nothing's left." Clara traced a hand down Emma's hair. "Then we don't quit either." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "You don't know what I've done. What follows me." Her eyes narrowed. I know you didn't let them burn. I know you still fight. His jaw worked, muscles tight. Fighting don't bring peace, just more graves. Clara leaned closer, her voice cutting through the morning stillness. Then let me choose whether I'd rather live in fear or beside you. For the first time, his eyes broke, softer, haunted. He looked at Emma, then at Clara, as if seeing something he'd buried long ago. By mid-morning, the sheriff arrived, dust clouding behind his horse. He surveyed the ruin, lips tight, hand resting near his pistol. You know this won't stop, Callahan said grimly. McGraw's Callan and riders from every saloon west of here. He means to finish this ranch. Jonas didn't answer. Callahan's eyes flicked to Clara, then back to Jonas. You'll have to face him sooner or later. Man like that don't stop till somebody puts him in the ground. Silence. The sheriff tipped his hat, turned his horse, and rode back the way he came. Clara waited until the sound of hooves faded. Then she set down the bucket she'd been carrying and stood square in front of Jonas. You heard him, she said. Jonas's hands clenched around the edge of the porch. You want to go back to it. Guns, blood, death. You want me to damn myself again. Her voice was calm, even every word deliberate. I want you to protect your daughter. The words hit harder than any bullet. Jonas's head dropped, the weight of it bowing his shoulders. His scar caught the sunlight, sharp against his skin. At last he rose. Slow, heavy, but certain. He strapped the revolvers back to his hips. Then God help us both, he said. That night, Clara stood in the doorway, rifle in her hands, watching the canyon glow under a blood-red moon. The land was quiet, but too quiet, the kind that comes before war. Behind her, Jonas oiled his guns, the click and scrape of metal echoing like prayers. Emma slept upstairs, dreaming of mothers and fathers who weren't afraid. The wind carried voices through the rocks, distant, low, hungry, McGraw's men gathering. Clara lifted the rifle to her shoulder, eyes steady, breath calm. We'll be ready, she whispered. Jonas glanced at her, shadows flickering across his face. And for the first time since the fire began, he nodded. The canyon seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the blood that was sure to come. Boots pounded the main street of Dry Creek. Dust hung thick, unmoving, as though the town itself was holding its breath. Jonas Hale walked steady, revolvers heavy on his hips. Clara Boone matched his pace, rifle in her hands, bonnet gone, hair streaked with ash. Behind glass panes, faces peered, shutters half closed. Children pulled back by fearful mothers. At the far end of the street, Silas McGraw and his riders waited. 10 men on horseback, their silhouettes jagged against the dying sun. Guns gleamed, horses stamped, spurs clinked. McGraw himself sat tall, black coat draped like a vulture's wings. Thought you'd run, McGraw called, voice thick with contempt. Jonas stopped. Clara raised a rifle to her shoulder, eyes steady, breathing calm. The wind carried the smell of gun oil and sweat, the silence so sharp it hurt. McGraw sneered. You ain't half the man they said you were. Scarred up goes hiding in a canyon, and now you drag a woman to die with you. Jonas's hand hovered above his revolver, fingers loose, easy, like he'd never left a gunfighter's life. Only ghost here will be you, McGraw, he said, voice flat. The riders laughed, but uneasily. The moment broke. Gunfire ripped the street apart. Jonas moved first, faster than thought. His revolvers flared. 2 riders pitched backward from their saddles, dust exploding where they fell. Clara's shot cracked. Clean and sure, another man tumbled sideways, his horse bolting wild. McGraw cursed, spurring his horse forward. His men fanned out, firing wild into doors and windows. Glass shattered, was splintered. Screams echoed from within the town. Jonas dug behind a trough, bullets sparking off the rim. He rolled, fired once, dropped another rider from 20 yards. Clara crouched low, chambering fast, calm amid the chaos. She sighted down the street, waited for the smallest gap, then squeezed. Her shot ripped McGraw's hat clean off, grazing his skull. Blood streaked down his temple. The outlaw bellowed, face twisted, firing blind rage into the dust. Jonas surged to his feet, advancing steady, each step measured. His revolver's bark, precise, deadly. Men fell one by one. Clara's rifle boomed, the recoil bruising her shoulder, but her hands didn't shake. She covered Jonas's flank, eyes hard, heart fierce. The gun smoke thickened, choking the street. Horses screamed, men shouted. The echoes ricocheted between shuttered windows. And then, silence. The last of McGraw's men sprawled lifeless in the dirt. Only McGraw remained, swaying in the saddle, blood dripping down his face. His eyes burned hatred, but fear quivered beneath it. Jonas stepped into the clearing dust. Guns leveled. Clara rose behind him, rifle trained, breath steady. McGraw spat red into the dirt. You think this changes anything? Another'll come. Another after that. Jonas's voice was low, final. Not while I'm still breathing. The outlaw lunged for his pistol. Clara fired first. Her shot struck true, ripping McGraw from the saddle. He hit the ground hard, the sound sickening, his pistol skittering useless into the dirt. The street went quiet. Only the wind stirred, carrying the last wisps of smoke. Jonas lowered his guns. His chest rose heavy, his scarred face carved in exhaustion. He turned slowly, eyes finding Clara. You saved me, he said, voice rough. She steadied the rifle, lowering it. We saved each other. From a window, a small figure burst out, Emma, barefoot, hair wild, running down the street. She threw herself into Clara's arms, sobbing into her dress. Clara knelt, gathering the girl close, pressing soot-streaked kisses into her hair. Emma whispered again, voice trembling, but full of hope. Can you be my mommy? The world seemed to hush. Jonas stood still, chest tightening, dust swirling at his boots. Clara held the child, eyes burning, and at last she answered, Yes, darling, forever. Emma clung tighter, as if she'd been waiting her whole life for those words. Jonas looked at them, mother and daughter bound in ash and fire, and something long buried broke in him. His knees weakened, and he sank onto the street, revolvers slipping from his hands. The town emerged slowly from behind shutters and doors, faces pale, whispers rising. They had seen Hale fight again. They had seen the bride. No one wanted stand unyielding. They would tell it in saloons and across canyons, how a forgotten woman and a haunted gunfighter faced the devil himself and did not fall. The last of the sun bled away, the street awash in dusk. Smoke drifted into the darkening sky, carrying with it the end of one story and the beginning of another. And somewhere in a hush, an old voice lingered, low, timeless, steady as the desert wind. They said she came unwanted, with nothing but a trunk and a name. But in the dust of Dry Creek, she found a daughter and a man who thought himself lost. And when the fire rose and the bullets sang, it was her hand, her courage, that turned the tide. That's how it happened. That's how the West remembers her.